Hello everyone and friends. I botched the video on pattern drafting for the pouch so badly that I'm literally having to redo the whole thing. Okay, so I've decided on this. I could take this right now and put the buttons on it, stitch the decorative edge here, stitch this edge here, and stitch these sides, and I'd be done. But for the sake of demonstrating how to modify an existing pattern, I've decided to show you how to do that. And as I showed you in the previous video, I took literally a pill bottle to determine the shape for the side. Okay? Now I'm going to show you how to calculate the pouch itself. Okay? So I'm going to take, first of all, I'm going to line up these holes here so I know where these holes are. So I know that what my actual distance is. Line up these holes, make sure that I have them on the holes. So this is my size right here. Okay? That's the actual size I've got when it's all said and done. And that calculates to 5 3/16. As you can see there, that's literally 2 7/8 roughly. But I figured 2 3/4 to be on the safe side. Okay? The actual usable space of this, I could probably get some all the way to the edge here. About, I have to figure at least 1/4 of an inch from this side to here for the seam, because this little side piece is going to stick into here about 1/4 of an inch. So I got to figure 1/4 of an inch on each side. That's how big I could make it, but I don't think that's good design to make it as big as I can. You get the measurement there. So I've got there roughly 5 and, let's see, let me do it this way. 5 1/4 roughly total, but actual, I think would be a safe bet would be about 3/4. That's how big I'm going to actually make it, is 3/4. I think that's a reasonable expectation for the side. 3/4 by, you got to figure the round and the flap. So the patch itself, I'm figuring it's going to go to about, let's see, right to about there. Let's figure 3/8. 1 3/8. And then you have the room for the flap as well. So my pouch size is going to be 1 3/8 by 3 1/4. Okay? That's what I've decided. So I have two choices for how I'm going to do this. I can do a flap that is square. So I'm going to actually measure for the square one 3 3/4 right here. So here to here, roughly 3 3/4. Okay? Okay, and then I'm going to measure 1 3/8. Right about there. Right about there. So if I were doing a square pouch, that's roughly how big it would be. That is from here to here, 3 3/4. From here to here, it's 1 3/8. That's what you call the pocket face. That's what the actual pocket size is going to be. Now you got to calculate the seam. Now the way square seams work, you've got a section. Let me see if I can get a little piece of leather just to show you, because this is important to know. Just a little scrap here. It's nice and thin. I'll use this one. When you're doing a seam for a pocket, a square pocket, you're going to have an area for the actual stitching, like here. See if I can show you a little bit better here. So you can have a little bit of area for your stitching there. Then you're going to have the actual area for the pocket depth as well. And then it'll be the pocket face. That's the basic shape of a square pocket. And usually your stitching area right here is going to be about, oddly enough, roughly 3/16. So the stitching area itself is going to be 3/16. So what I need to do is determine how tall I want that pocket to be. Okay? Now if you're just going to do a credit card, as you can see, this pocket's not going to be big enough for a credit card. So a credit card's out. I'm not going to be able to do a credit card. Okay? Now the question is, I mentioned earlier about doing a belt loop, right? Most belt loops, if I measure my own belt, you figure about at least 1.5 to 2 for a belt. So let's figure you have to have 2 inches for a belt, right? Do you have enough room for a belt? Yes, you do. You could do a belt loop on this pouch. And I would do a belt loop of, you'd have to figure on 3/16, that's 6/16. Terrible. Now that's, let's see, 6/16, 3/8. So you'd have to have 2 inches plus 3/8 size for a belt loop, and it would be right on the nose, literally. You see if I can show you there. I don't know if this is focusing in, but 2 3/8 would put you right at the edge. So you could do a belt loop on this if you wanted to and get away with it. Credit card holder out, belt loop in, or a label. You could do a label, and if you're going to do a label, I would definitely do something 2 inch by 4. There's no reason not to make it full sized. So if you're planning to do a label, 2 by 4. Belt loop, I would do 2 3/8 for the width by, and your area between your belt loops also a factor. Most belt loops are between 3 and 4 inches apart. So 3 would be the safe side. 2 3/8 by 3 inch for a belt loop. That's what you would do for a belt loop. That's what you would do for a label. The pouch, I'm doing 3 3/4 by 1 3/8. Back to the pouch itself. Okay? So you have 2 choices. You can do either a square pouch or you can do a round pouch. The dimensions are going to be largely the same. So I'm going to write in the area for the round pouch right now as well, just to show you here. See here, I'm going to put from here to here, like that, and then I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares. Seven squares. I know I keep saying that. It's like playing that game Foursquare. So your round is going to be basically the same shape as a square. The only difference is you're going to factor in a round. And you could do a real shallow round like this. A real shallow round. Or you could do a larger round, something more like this. It really depends on what you want, how you want to do this. So a shallow round or a larger round, something more like this. I'm just freehanding this, so bear with me here. It really depends on what you want to do. So, how do you calculate this? Well, you decide how tall you want the pouch to be, as I've said, and then you add 3/16 to it. So let's say I'm going to do a pouch that sticks out about 1/4 of an inch, okay? So I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch to here plus 3/16 to there. 1/4 of an inch to here plus 3/16 to there. 1/4 of an inch to there, 3/16 to here. Now you're going to lose a little bit in the round section of it. So you're going to do 1/4 of an inch and 3/16 to there. So this is roughly what I'm looking at for the square one, the actual dimensions. And then your line's going to come there, your line's going to come there, your line is going to come here, and your line's going to come here. So that's the basic pattern for the square box right there. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to factor your holes in, are going to go right here along this edge like so. As you can see, you're going to be punching along the edge and you lose about 3/16. So we're going to mark the 3/16 mark here as well. That one doesn't do 3/16. So my 3/16 mark's about right here. Might as well mark the line for the stitching. 3/16 there. It's good to get all this marked out when you're doing your pattern, so you don't have to worry about it when you go to actually do it. Okay, 3/16 to there. So this will be the seam. For the square box. Right, so. Okay, that's the basic seam right here. I'm going to write seam right there. Okay, same here, seam. And what will happen is this will fold up to this will fold up to this, and then it will stick together, and you can actually do, let me get my marker, right here. You're going to have 2 punched holes here, 2 punched holes here, 2 here, 2 here, like so. And then you're going to stitch the side together right here, so that the square box will actually be shaped like an actual square. And I'll draw that in a second, but let me go ahead and mark all these first, because I want to make sure they're marked appropriately, so that you see how this is working pattern-wise. These are the dimensions for the square box. So there's a hole there, hole there, hole, hole. All right, so you're going to have holes along here. Holes along here. Okay. Holes along here. Now these aren't accurate. I'm not going to worry about how accurate they are because it'll be determined by your punch. But if I do an actual pattern, these holes will be accurate. So what's going to happen here, when you cut this out to shape, these holes here are going to this is going to be where you fold. You're going to stitch these holes together. It's going to create a box that looks a little bit like this. You got your leather coming to here, okay? And then you're going to end up with a box that goes like so. And then you're going to have a piece of leather here that gets stitched with a needle. So you're going to stitch there, and then you're going to have a line here, roughly. That's this side here that's going to get stitched. And it's going to create an actual box. Like so. And then you'll put your design in there. Okay? So that's the square pouch face. Next you got the round one. Now, I've already done the round one just so you can see, because I am having to redo it. This is the actual shape that I chose right here for the round. Just so you can see what I actually chose there. Okay? This one's a little different. You're going to have a sort of invisible line that runs right along here. Just right along here, like so. Oh, this pen's going bad. Typical. That's the one flaw with those Sharpie Ultra Fines. They don't last very long. You're going to have a line that runs basically right along here. You're not going to actually draw this in or anything. It's just going to be roughly where your stitching holes are going to go. You're going to have stitching holes here, like along here. Just like this. When you look at this, you'll see the stitching holes that run right along the edge, like so. And that's how you're going to do your stitching. So this will be the pocket face. Now when you're doing a round pouch, you don't actually factor in the sides into the piece. It's actually a separate piece. And it's determined by the length of this line right along the edge. The outer line right there. That's what determines the length of the side piece. There's a couple of ways of doing this, but sometimes I just use like you can either use something like, it doesn't have to be perfectly accurate, but I'm going to show you a quick and easy and dirty way of doing this. Where you basically just sort of go like this. Like so. That's the line I'm following there. So I'm looking right now, that whole line all along the edge is about 6 and it looks like 3/8. But to be on the safe side, I would just factor 7. Now let's do the centimeter one. For those who are using centimeter, it's the same technique. Your 7 is going to be here. You're looking at about 18. But for the sake of safety, plan on 19 or 20 centimeters. Okay? And it's the same thing when you're doing this. You got to factor in how wide you want this to be, and we're going to be doing about the same here. The difference here is we have to add a stitching line on both sides. So you figure 3/16 and 3/16, that's going to be 3/8. Then you're going to have to determine the width of your pocket. We're going to do the same as this one over here, and that's going to be either 7 millimeters, or we had decided on 1/4 for the pocket. So that's 1/4 plus 3/8 gives you the size of this side right here. So we're going to do that. We figured 7 inches to here. There's my line there. There's my line there. Or 19. Let me go ahead and do just 19 centimeters, which ends up being 7.5. That's a good safe distance. This doesn't have to be perfect, and I'll show you why later on. So I'm going to create a strip that's 7.5 inches long by 1/4 plus 3/8. 1, 2, 3. 1/4 plus 3/8. 1, 2, 3. Like so. Okay. Oh, my pen didn't draw that line in. There you go. So that's this is going to be from, go ahead and draw this line in. From here to here, it's 7.5. From here to here, it's the actual distance here is 5/8 is the actual distance. And this is the pouch side. This is the pouch face. And here we've got, from here to here, just so you have this accurate measurement, 3 3/4, and from here okay, I'm back. So here to here, you're literally looking at 1 3/8. Okay? So that's the piece for that, and this is the piece for this. Now we got to factor in the actual size of the flap. Well, guys, it's good to see you again. So I screwed up my pattern. It happens when you're doing your own pattern drafting at times, when you come up with an idea, you try to execute it, you create a neat little pattern, and something doesn't work out. And it usually boils down to something you didn't account for, something you weren't expecting. In this case, this flap is not long enough. Okay? You'll see here, I literally made the flap longer than what my pattern actually called for, and it still wasn't long enough. So you can tell me, so I'm going to show you where I'm at, and you tell me what's wrong with this flap, okay? So here is the basic pouch, right? It's going to set right on there like that. So what's wrong with this flap? It doesn't have enough length to wrap all the way around the depth of that pocket is the problem. This flap was way too short. It literally isn't long enough. So what do you do when you find out that you've made something that's flat out not long enough? Well, you go back to the drawing board. You redo your pattern. So I'm going to take and I'm going to put that on there. Literally. You can see the pouch. That's basically how wide it's going to be. And you can see here, it doesn't even reach over. That little space doesn't even reach to the leather. So what do? I have to add this depth to the pocket. And then I'm going to add a little bit of extra. So I'm going to literally measure. Here's the pouch. It's going to sit about right here. I have at least 5/8 depth right there. This pocket I was planning on on 1/4 of an inch. When I actually stitch it into place, it'll be about 1/4 of an inch, but right now I'm reading 5/8, as you can see there, 5/8. So I need to take and add at least 5/8 to this flap. But I'm going to go ahead and do more than 5/8 because it's okay to have a flap that's a little bit larger that comes around and sticks out just a little bit. It's always, in case you ever get this bulging thick with a bunch of crap in there, you want it a little bit longer anyway. So I've got to take this and add 5/8 to the depth of it. Pretty straightforward. So what you do, take your ruler. You figured this is 3 3/4 inches, right? So I'm literally going to go over here to this little area here and do 3 3/4. Where are my pens? I really do need to clean my workspace. And it's the one thing I hate doing. 3/4. So here we go. And I don't want to impact this portion here, so I'm going to drop down to about here. So I have room for my flap. And I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, and 3/4. Right here. There we go. There's my length. So this right here, as you can see here, it says that it's 7/8. And that's about right, 7/8. So I need to add 5/8 to that. That's 12/8. So that's 1 and 4/8. That's 1 1/2. So literally my flap's going to go to here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make it 1 3/4. Okay? 1 3/4. Right there. I'm going to actually add a little bit of extra to it. What's going on here? And then what I'll do is I'll do the buttonholes when this is in place. This piece here. I'll actually factor in the buttonholes once I set that in place. And that'll also allow me to make any changes to the size of it once the pouch is actually in place. So there you have it. There's my flap now. Same thing here. I'm going to calculate my stitching holes right here. Like so. Those are my stitching holes. Taking a marker. Just so I know where my stitching holes are. I'm not going to worry too much about getting it perfect because I'm not going to follow that particular stitching hole pattern. And if you want to cheat the process, you can literally take your flap that you screwed up on, if you have one that you screwed up on, and just redo the hole like this. redo the round, like so. Just drawing the round like that. And there you go. There's my amended pattern for the flap right now. I wouldn't cut this though until you actually have the button holes worked out and everything. But I'm going to write it in there just to remind myself of what the basic shape is going to be. So then I have to take a piece of leather and actually create that now. But first, let me write in the dimensions here so you can see them. Okay, this right here is 3 3/4. The dimensions of this is 1 3/4. 1 3/4. And this is the pouch flap 2. So I'm going to X this out so that when I actually create my pattern, I won't think that one's a good one. And there's my new pattern. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that out and get the process started so when the time comes, I'll actually have it ready to go. So there you go. That's what happens when you totally screw up and you have to go back to the drawing board.